then the whole thing working in a war. How does it work? What do you do? I mean, I had no clue.
Welcome to the Shipping Podcast, where I meet interesting maritime professionals sharing their passion for the shipping industry and their everyday job. I am your host. My name is Lena Gothberg. Hello, Shipping Podcast listeners, and welcome to episode 246. If you listen to episode 243, you might recognize the guest in this episode. This is something new. I haven't done it before, but Erik Froste, the guest in my episode 243, and we both realized that the sound quality in that episode was too poor. And the conversation is so meaningful that we wanted to make a new attempt to broadcast it online. So this is the latest and improved version of our precious conversation in episode 243. Erik is a friend from the Swedish maritime cluster, and he went on an assignment to Ukraine earlier this year. We talked about his experience visiting and working in a war-torn country. Erik collaborated with the European Union Advisory Mission for Civilian Security Sector Reform Ukraine, that is EUAM Ukraine in short. And that is an organization established at the Ukrainian authorities' invitation in 2014. Erik's experiences from his assignment offer a unique and enlightening perspective on the global maritime industry. This is a conversation you want to listen to. This is Erik Froste and what happened in Ukraine.
Every conversation matters.
Welcome to the Shipping Podcast. Could you please introduce yourself?
Thank you, Lena. My name is Erik Froste. I'm currently working at the Swedish Roadferries here in Sweden, of course. There's 70 ferries, governmentally owned company. That is myself, the professional side, and the more personal side. I have 4 grown-up kids and have a girlfriend here in Stockholm, where I live.
And what is your background? Have you been sailing?
Yeah, I'm a master mariner. So when I was, 17, I think, I went to sea. I had my 18th birthday in Nagoya in Japan. And then it continued. I'm working at sea. And then, of course, going into school in order to get a master mariner. But I left sea when I was about 30 years old and started working at shore again. And
you have been the CEO of 1 or 2 ports, I think?
Yeah, I've been fortunate. So I've been working at sea, on various shipping lines, private owns, and ports, and forwarding and port agent companies, mainly in Sweden. Various places here in Sweden. So
you have a fitting background for the assignment that we are going to talk about now.
Yeah, I have a fitting background both for the assignment we're going to talk about, but also for this shipping podcast, I would say. I know most of the shipping industry, how it works and how it does not work sometimes. So, yes.
And what was your assignment? You went on an adventure.
I went on an adventure, something I could not even believe 1 year ago. It was actually 1 year ago. Someone called me from Brussels and asked if I would be interested in assignment in Ukraine during the wartime, staying in Odesa and mapping and understanding the shipping industry, the commercial side of the industry in Ukraine. And there I went then in January.
And what did you think when they called you?
Well, of course, first I was...
Wrong number?
Yeah. No, not that. I was thinking, first of all, I was, of course, very flattered, extremely flattered. Wow. And also I quite quickly understood, yes, I can do this? Because I was really thinking, am I the right person in order to do this mapping? And I thought, yeah, I can do. I cannot work in a country in war. I have no experience of that. But I can do this business thanks to my extremely wide, broad background, both in the shipping industry, port agency, forwarding, ports, and meeting the government, and actually now working for a governmental company. So that was one of the most important things. I can do this quite well. Of course, there's other people as well. But then the whole thing, working in a war, how does it work? What do you do? I mean, I had no clue.
Did you get any training?
Yeah. Absolutely. So later on, then this was European Union. So it was European Union Advisory Mission, EUAM, in Ukraine. So there is a mission in Ukraine as having the security assessments. There are people working mainly in Kiev and 3 other places, including Odesa, where I later stayed. So I mean, there was an organization in place. And both training, heat training, which stands for Hostile Environment Awareness Training. It was 1 week down in the Netherlands, learning really how to cope in a hostile environment. What happened if you get kidnapped? What happened? And of course, a lot of medical things, helping other people, and a lot of important things. Learning to recognize different kind of minds, and so on and so on.
It's so far away from your everyday work.
Yeah.
Or your everyday life, I would say.
Yeah, I should mention, I am extremely civilian. I'm really from the commercial side in shipping.
I know.
Yeah, you know. I mean, I have no experience handling weapons and guns and mines and nothing like that at all. So this is really very, very strange for me.
And what did you know about Ukraine before you went?
Yeah, good question. I've never been to Ukraine. I've been working a lot in Russia, both when I was young as a sailor, going to Novorossiysk and Kaliningrad and St. Petersburg and Usluga and all those. And then later on, I was a businessman traveling many places, of course, mostly Moscow and St. Petersburg, but also other smaller places. But I've never been in Ukraine. So one of the things you mentioned, training, was to actually start reading and listen about Ukraine. How was the history? When did Ukraine get status as an own country? What have happened? How many countries has ruled in Ukraine? And that was quite many, including the Vikings.
So we were there as well.
Oh, yeah. In Kiev, you see a lot of, remindings from the Viking time, both name-wise. The figure 1, Odin, we in Scandinavia know Odin is the biggest god from the Asa, I believe. So Odin is number 1 in our faith, and Odin is the figure 1 in Ukrainian. So, we got a little lost of the topic, I'm afraid.
I'm sorry. Yeah, but I mean, why not? We need to know where you went and how it was and how did you feel, I think, because this is extraordinary. So what happened when you left Sweden to go to Ukraine?
First of all, I need to say that we were two people from Sweden. I was in charge and knowing the commercial side. And now my colleagues, I would call him my friend, Kenneth Namers. He's coming from the Coast Guard side. So we were two going there. So we were making one report together, but we were doing all the meetings together and so on. And that was really one of the good thing, that we were two people. We could discuss the things after the meeting, during the meeting, would really hear. Because it was difficult, because the meetings was, of course, in Ukraine or sometimes in Russian, never in English. So there was a lot of interpretation all the time. So all the meetings took time. But to get there, okay, you do fly to Poland. There's no aircraft, no flight over Ukraine because it's going to be shut down by the Russians. So you go to Warszawa, and then you take a train in the afternoon, and the next, not morning, before lunch next day, you are in Kiev. So it's more than 12 hours train. You can also go to the border cities in Poland and Ukraine and take a car, if you have a car. It takes 10, 12 hours driving up to Kiev. And we needed to go to Kiev to the first time, checking in, so to say, in the mission and also to the authorities. We were not there as tourists. We were there official European Union's officials and get the accreditation and all that. And that was really the first thing. When I was driving a car, me and Kenneth, into Kiev. It didn't take 1 or 2 hours before we had the first air alert.
Attention, air raid alert.
Something where you very, very quickly got used to. And then the first time, then we were, should I get my helmet, my safety vest, my gas mask? Should we find a shelter? And only a week later, those questions was so ridiculous because you do not do that just because there is an air alert. But the first time, it was not a kind of scary. It was scary. And so getting there, but then on the actual road up to 12 hours up to Kiev, you stop at the petrol station, and they were just like in any Western country, like there's good coffee, you can buy food, the shelter in the shelves in the gas stations are full with the various commodities. So it was almost like being home. The roads were a little more poor condition, but you could find poor condition roads in Western Europe as well.
Yeah.
But then, of course, you did see houses that had been bombed by drones or missile, both during the road up and of course down in the suburbs of Kiev. Then you really saw it.
Mm. And when you arrived in Kiev, how were you then greeted by the authorities you were supposed to map up?
Yeah, first going to Kiev, we did not do so much the first time. We just stayed there 2 days and get an accreditation mainly from the authorities. Then we took another car, 6 hours driving from Kiev down to Odesa, where I was staying, me and Kenneth. So there we started to have the first meeting. We had already been having some meeting, mainly with the maritime guard, the coast guard in Ukraine before by teams. But then we started to have meeting. And how we were greeted, it was an interesting because very, very openly and very, very friendly, with a few exceptions. It is like someone high up in the hierarchy have told them, this is important, answer these questions. This is the way to getting closer to Europe and closer and get into European Union. So they were very open, spend hours with us, again and again, meetings, answer the question, and also written questions that we send afterwards. So we got a lot of information. Sometimes we got too much information, things we cannot mention in the report and things we cannot say here because that would be bad for the war, so to say. So very openly.
So what kind of authorities did you meet with? Or persons or companies or?
Yeah, we met the Coast Guard and the Navy, for instance. We met the custom, we met the maritime agencies, we met the port authorities, USPA. There's one central organization and one USPA in each port. We were out in all the ports that are not still temporarily occupied by Russia. So we were traveling a lot along the Black Sea coast, so to say, to see the ports, meeting governmentally owned terminal operation, meeting privately owned terminal operating, meeting forwarders, meeting port agents, meeting retired captains that are working both in the industry and on ports, meeting there's a lot of seafarers in Ukraine, so meeting crewing companies, owners, and yeah, everyone really.
And what did you learn?
We learned the people of itself. The only problem, so I would say, is the lack of English speaking. They need, both in the shipping industry, we are used to everyone speak English. And many people in Ukraine do not, which was a little surprising. but some did. So we could have a few meetings in English, mostly with were interpreted from our question in English, then someone interpreted to Ukrainian, and then on the other side of the table they were discussing a little, and then again reply, and then translating that to English for us. So the meeting took a long time. So the English is one thing that need to be better, actually. They will get tricked or fooled or just not get into society otherwise, especially in the shipping industry. But what we learned was the people, I mean, there is a country in war, they do so much. They are entrepreneurs. They are well educated. They are very digital, and they are, I mean, really, really want to get into the European Union. So they have a very clear goal, I would say.
I had some contact with you when you were in Ukraine, and you were going to dinner, and I hardly believed you, because you said, well, I'm going out now. Or you were running in the mornings, and I felt like, my God, take care, be careful. So how was it to be living in the Ukraine?
Yeah, that is interesting. I was living in Odesa, up in Kiev, in central Kiev. It's, I would say, even though we have a terrible shooting from the Russians just a couple of weeks ago, when they were shooting missiles in a hospital full with kids, normal, I would say, when you're downtown Kiev, you are reasonably safe, thanks for the air protection. In Odesa, not so much. So it is a little more dangerous in Odesa. But of course, if you go even east to the front line, that is completely different. I have not been there. I have been more in the, well, not in the actual war zone. But still so, there are air alerts twice a day. There are missile strikes minimum every week, maybe twice a week, sometimes during many hours, sometimes 2-3 days in a row, various dependent. So, and the missile, we're starting with the air alerts. Okay, you hear an air alert from the building, some speaker somewhere, and you also have app in your phones. What you do when you hear an air alert, it's not running to shelter. It's too frequent, it's too often. What you do, you're looking into the app and see, you're going into Telegram, the platform Telegram, and there you follow different channels and you see, what is this air alert about? Is it a missile or is it a drone? Is it only an Iranian Shahid drone? Then you have time. If there is a missile, you have 1 or 2 minutes. And a missile is 400-500 kilo explosives, warhead, and a drone is only 30-40. So there's a difference. So how you need to do your risk assessments all the time. Is it going to where I'm staying in Odesa, or is it going to Chornomorsk? And that is like 40 kilometers away. That is a huge difference. And those things, the Ukrainian people that are living there, they're doing this all the time. And of course, when we are getting there, we are doing the same. And if they're only a drone, basically we don't care so much. If the missile is really important, get down to the shelters. And also, the law of Ukraine is when there is an air alert, then all office, all governmentally owned companies or authorities, all shopping malls need to close and sending the people out. They cannot force people to go to the shelter, but they can force them out of the building and out on the streets. And you see that. They go out the streets and take a smoke or whatever and look in the phone for what is happening on these various Telegram channels. So that is how it's working. This is also in the nighttime. There is a lot of missile and drone attacks in nighttime. This is terror. It's war, but same time, terror. So you wake up 2 o'clock in the morning and you hear air alert in your app, in your phones, or from the wherever you're staying. And then you're looking into the Telegram channel. Should I go down to shelter or should I not? 95%, I don't care. I stay in my bed, but I cannot sleep because the direction of the drones or the missiles can change and get into where I am staying. So you need them to follow this app, see what is really happening. Okay. And then sometimes you hear the air alerts start and sometimes not. But normally, most time there's not starting. And then after 1 hour, 2 hours of free, then, okay, this air alert is over and you can go and try to fall to sleep again, which I had huge problem with. So, this is the everyday life. I have been, as you mentioned, sitting and having a dinner Restaurants are open, beautiful restaurant, good food, great wine, everything, very cheap. You're sitting there and having with friends or colleagues, it's a nice Italian restaurant with Italian wine, and then you hear the air alert, okay, it is not here, or we are in the basement, so we don't care at all. And then we order another bottle of wine or drink one more glass, and then 1 hour later, you check in your phone again, and then you see people have died 750 meters away from you due to the drone attacks.
Oh, yeah, terrible.
It's so surrealistic. And this is how the Ukrainian people are living basically every day. More air alerts in the east, less air alerts in the west, but still every day.
And the shelters, it's not like we imagine them to be.
No, it is not. In the office, and then if there is an air alert during the day, as I mentioned, the law, you need to evacuate the office space, and then you go down to shelter. And then you have the shelter is the parking house just below. I mean, you don't need a shelter to be secured for a missile or for gas attack or for nuclear radioactive. There is just something that is sure if someone's shooting down the missile or the drones, everything that is up there must come down, shooting down, and the parts from it raining down on you. This is what the shelters mainly are for. Of course, it's better to have a good shelter than a bad shelter and so on and so on. But a parking garage down 1 or 2 floors down, perfect. It is 99% that is good enough. So you have putting out some furniture there, table and chairs, and continue the meeting, open up the team meeting or the official meeting again, and continue the working hours.
It's so hard to imagine, which might be good, but yeah.
Yeah, we hope sincerely that Ukrainians are continue fighting, the West continue giving them money and weapons, so we don't get this Russian fight here to where we are living. So yeah, we hope we never have to experience that.
This is the shipping podcast. Maybe we should talk a little bit about shipping and so on. I know that Ukraine is exporting a lot of grain.
Ukraine is exporting a lot of grain, and not only that is getting money into Ukraine, it's also getting food to people that are starving, mainly in Africa. Huge exports, for instance, to Egypt and other African countries. So it is important not only for Ukraine's sustainability, getting the money into the country, also for the people of the world. And that, of course, when the war started, normally we say the war started February 22, but that is not true. The war actually started in February, March 2014, when Russia started to occupy the Crimea island. But the full-scale invasion, that started 22 February. It's a little more than 2 years ago, the full-scale invasion. And what happened then is that the export of grain from the Black Sea ports, the greater Odesa ports, and also the Crimea ports, of course, earlier, it dropped, it's closed. And the United Nations was extremely worried about how to get food, grain, to people starving, mainly in Africa. So what has happened then was that there was an agreement later on. That was in July 22. Yeah, it was in July 22, the Black Sea Grain Initiative. That was an agreement between Russia, Ukraine, Turkey, and the United Nations. Basically, Turkey was involved because they are having in charge, so to say, of the Bosporus, the narrow gap out of Black Sea. So they have a control function. And also at that time, the President Erdogan there was friendly with Putin. And okay, so Russia allowed Ukraine to export up to, a number of vessels every month with grain. And that way, both getting food out to the poor people starving and also getting money into Ukraine. Of course, Russia did not want to have money into Ukraine, but they were basically forced by, most of the countries in the world, including the United Nations, that allow some exports. But they say, okay, then we want to inspect the vessels, so they're not bringing any weapons in and so on and so on. And then they send so few inspections personnel, so they could not export that much, maybe 2 million tons per month, something like that. And this Black Sea Grain Initiative, it was 1 year, July 22 to July 23. And then Putin said, no more extensions, we skip this one. And the day after, mid-July then 23, he sent over 300 missiles and drone towards all port infrastructure all over Ukraine, mainly in the greater Odesa ports and down in Donau ports, Ismail and Reni, to striking at VTS station, cranes, grain storage, oil storage, grain facilities, trains, rail tracks, and everything. 300 drones and missiles, one night.
How did the Ukrainian react to that? I have learned from you that they are a very resourceful people.
Yeah, they are resourceful and they are hard. They have been in war with Russia more than 10 years. And when they talk about with the grandfather, they know how it is to be occupied by Russia. They do not want to go back there again. I really want to state that. They don't want to. 1/3 of Ukraine is Russian speaking. But that is not the same as you like the Russians, especially not now, but not before either. It's just a language. Okay, what did they do then after the 17 or 18 July 23 with so much collapse? Well, they started to rebuild. They're building it up again and starting to export. At that time, they could not use the greater Odesa, the really big ports in the northern part of Black Sea, but still in Ukraine. So they started doing this in the Danube area, the Donau River ending in Black Sea, in the big ports Ismail and Reni. They normally handle 500,000 metric tons of grain per month average. But then from not July, but August, September, October, November, they handled each 1 million. So twice up from normal volumes, those ports were handling grain exports in order to feed the people of the world. And everyone that's been working in the port can imagine how it would be if you were suddenly from one day to another, including having it collapsed all the equipment, getting twice the volume. I am so impressed how they did it and that they did it. And I can only imagine the hundreds of kilometers of queues of trucks and rail cars and so getting in there. And I do know the number of pilots were not enough. And the VTS station has already getting missiles direct into the VTS station with people dying. So they were VTS personnel, they were having a free shareware of the app Marine Traffic and a handheld VTS. That is what they were using in order to go, directing the traffic. But they did it. They are a strong people, Ukrainian. That is during the autumn last year. And then something else, they are creative, the Ukrainian people. So they were not happy with that. They understood that Putin is not ever getting back to the table regarding the Black Sea Grain Initiative. So they needed to do something by themselves. The first thing they did, and actually they did that already last summer in, I think, June, they took back the Valisky Island, the Snake Island. And that is at the mouth of the Danube, where the Danube is entering Black Sea. So you need to have that island and putting air defense on that so the Russians cannot take it back. And believe me, they tried many, many times, but they did not. And then starting taking out a Navy vessel that was sending a lot of those missiles, and those who could send missiles towards the shipping, the commercial shipping, taking out the Russian Navy in the Black Sea, which they have managed very, very good. And then the next thing was the Russian were dropping glide mines into the Black Sea that was, in the fairways. And Ukraine identified a number of planes that could drop those glide mines. There was not so many, and they took those few planes out, so they could not drop any mines. The problem with the mines did not disappear, but it was getting much, much, much smaller. And then also getting insurance in place. So I think it was a British company, Mars, that were arranging an insurance, war insurance, that the Ukrainian government is standing behind, 100% coverage both for the vessels and on the cargo if something happens. So the ships were daring, or ship owners daring to go in there. I don't think so many people, unfortunately, cared about the seafarers. They know very seldom do. But the owners, at least, dare to send their oldest vessel in there. So commercial shipping going to the Valiska Island, the Snake Island, basically. The Navy is there in control, starting a convoy. The convoy is going by non-war ships, more search and rescue ships, Ukrainian search and rescue. First going along the coastline in Romania, Bulgaria, NATO, European Union countries in their territorial waters, sneaking the coast up, getting up to the Snake Islands in Ukrainian territorial water, convoy, as mentioned, with civilian warship with the search and rescue vessel, going all the way up then to the northern part of Black Sea, where the greater Odesa ports are, Chornomorsk, Odesa, and Pivdeni. And then they opened those ports, one of them, mainly grain import. Now it's open for other cargoes and commodities, and also during the spring when I was there, open up for the container ports. And they managed then to start exporting grain volumes at the same extent as pre-war. So those three ports were handling more than 8 million tons of grains every month during December, January, February, March, April, and May. So, at the same time, they continued attacks from the Russian against the port infrastructure in all those ports. And they were hitting, a lot was shut down, thanks both to the local equipment, so to say, and the Patriot system. But a lot was getting through this and shooting down cranes. And so now the export of grain is working. But it's a tough life.
There is a lot of seafarers out of Ukraine nowadays. A lot of crewing companies, I understand.
Yeah, that was one of my big findings that I had no clue about. I had met Ukrainian seafarers when I was at sea, absolutely. But there are several schools for getting officers out of Ukrainian seafarers. There are even more, just getting ABs. Every year is graduating 7,500 officers for the commercial navy in Ukraine. 7,500. There are more 100,000 seafarers registered in Ukraine. It's, I was also say, unheard of. It's comparing that with the other really big seafarer country is Philippines, but they don't have so many officers. Ukraine have a lot of officers. And good sailors, 100,000 seafarers, and all the organization that is needed around it. You mentioned crewing companies, but also the authorities making the seafarer books and so things. But interesting, no ships, no Ukrainian flagged ships. So the ships I mentioned going into the Greater Odesa ports and exporting grain, there are never ever any Ukrainian ships. There are, whatever. Those normal flags, so to say. But a lot of seafarers, the business needs to have them in. Otherwise, there will be a lot of vessels idle, standing still, and having no crew on board.
How can we, the rest of the world's maritime space, help them? How can we reach out to them?
Yeah, it's a good question. There is a lot of good examples that is already happening, so to say. But if you're a port association, or if you are a union association, or if you are in a port authority or a coast guard, try to get in contact. They are willing and interested in getting in contact with both European Union and US companies. Absolutely, because they are not stupid people. Actually, they are very intelligent. They are more used to digital equipment than we are. Many people, especially younger ones, of course. Those is my age, not so much maybe, with some extensions. But try to get in contact with various sources. Getting them out of Ukraine showing them your country and how your management is working, and for a couple of weeks, and then they go back to Ukraine. That would help Ukraine, because you can see both the legacy, but also the management system is 30 years ago, they became a country. Before that, they were Russia. It was part of the Soviet Union. That both legacy and management system is still to some extent there. The private companies, not so much. The official agencies, more. The boss is the boss, and so on and so on. And you stick with your own knowledge, and you send it upwards and to the chain of hierarchy, but maybe not so much what is happening with it. In the Western countries, we are trying to, you have a responsibility for everything, not only what's in your little box. So some people, we need to get them to understand our way of thinking, our way of management in leading people, I would say.
Maybe we have something to learn from them.
Yeah, that is a huge difference. All countries are every year sending a lot of money to the not so industrial countries, and here is something different. Here we can learn so much back. I have learned, you mentioned the shelters. I learned so many things from the Ukrainian way of living and also the experience. So there is absolutely much more we can learn from them. Not only we are going there and tell them how to do. So yeah, very, very educated, more to learn.
So what is in your report? What did you report back to the European Union?
Yeah, the report is down in Brussels, and I was worried that, okay, this is just one of these reports, nobody cares, but it looks like they are caring, and they are now educating, and no, they are hiring people that will be taking care of these things that myself and Kenneth Namers has said, these need to be done, these need to be taken action to. So they are hiring people that are going down to Odesa again. And then hopefully I can come down and meet them later before Christmas or something like that. Introducing them to our counterparts and so on. There's two things. One is getting Europe closer to the European Union. And then I mentioned like a little more management, a little more soft things, but also a lot of digital system. But getting into European Union, not only getting closer to Europe, getting to European Union, then you need to fulfill the legislation of the European Union, the laws. And that is like, it is 35 chapters. And it's not like you can negotiate, I want 32.5 of those chapters. No. You have to take all that legislation and put in your own legislation in Ukraine. And that is, of course, a big work that Ukraine need to do by themselves. But they need help to explain and understand and so on from the European Union, people that are much brighter than I am, at least. But that is one part of it, that need to be done. And the other one, when you're entering European Union, we have within the shipping industry, like maritime single windows, we have various systems that compulsory. And our suggestion is send them to Ukraine already now. The marine domain awareness system, send them to Ukraine now. Otherwise they will, and they are already starting to develop their own, because everyone knows we need this. Send our European unions, they are already there, they are in place. Things like that is reasonably easy. If you're talking about the IMO regulations, they had signed most of them, ratified most of them, at least good enough, so to say. As you know, everyone listening, you don't need to. There's no compulsory law that ratify all of them. They have ratified most. But I cannot honestly say that all are implemented. And then Ukraine is not the only country in the world that's not implemented. If you're looking into, let's say, oil disasters, there is no equipment, and there's no vessel, and there's no trading. And of course, now it's a war situation, it's mines out there. You cannot do it so much anyhow, but there will be a time after the war, and we need to start preparing for that as well. So there are, especially in the oil disaster field, so to say, environmental, there is things to do. Not only Ukraine, the whole Black Sea. Cooperation with the other countries in the Black Sea. For us living up here in the north, you can very see similarities very easy with the Baltic Sea and the Black Sea. The Baltic Sea is 10% smaller than the Black Sea. There is basically the same number of countries around the Black Sea and the Baltic Sea. Both those two seas have quite narrow gap leaving the sea out to the ocean. In the Black Sea is the Bosporus, Turkey, and here in Baltic Sea it's Öresund and Bälten, which Sweden and Denmark is handling. So there are very, very similarities. And here in the Baltic Sea, we have the Helcom Convention, so 50 years old, how to handle disasters, environmental disaster. And Ukraine, there have been initiatives, absolutely. There are some countries are better than other countries, but some countries have nothing, really. And Black Sea is a big sea. So we can all see what's happening there in the future.
You have now been at home for 2 months or so.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
More relaxed. I sleep much better. Feel a little, not guilty, but leaving Ukraine and the people I met there, well, on their own sounds a little harsh, but still I feel a little running away, going home. I think that is normal. I'm still following a lot what is happening in Ukraine via, of course, the local media and Telegram channels. And I can see the differences in the Western media, what we are writing and what they are writing here and there. I can see the Russian narrative so well, what we are writing here. And in Ukraine, it's more, maybe not the truth, but they have a different, what are they saying, the President Trump's advisor, alternative facts.
Will you go back?
I will absolutely go back with my family when the war is over. I hope to have a chance to go back now before Christmas, meeting the new employed people in the mission that is carrying out the job. So I really hope that I would like to go. I have no problem going back. I was never afraid of my life when I was there. You need to make the security assessments every day, several times every day. But I was never afraid of my life. But absolutely there were times I was thinking, maybe I should not be here right now. But I will go back.
How do you see the future for Ukraine and the people there?
I am always, you know me reasonably well, I am always very, very optimistic about everything. And of course also here. But I see good signs. There are long-term commitments from various countries, both money-wise and weapon-wise. I think there are absolute countries in Europe that are not so keen of sending more money to Ukraine. But when it comes down to think, I strongly believe and we understand Russia need to be stopped. So they will send more money and weapons, which need to be sent. And the Ukrainian will use it and stop and pushing back the Russian invasion. Will they manage to get 100% of their own country back? Maybe not. But I guess and absolutely hope more than today. But maybe not 100%. But I'm optimistic. The question is really what will happen afterwards. And I assume, now I'm speculating, that both European Union and NATO will quickly try to get them into their own organizations, because that's the only way to stop next attempt from the Russia taking Ukraine and other countries back. But I'm optimistic it will change, and Ukraine will be a huge asset to Europe after this.
What do you appreciate the most once you now are back?
I mean, sleeping is really important. It was so clear. When my night sleep was interfered every night by air alerts, my brain did not work. So, and this is one of the things I feel guilty. People are still having like that back in Ukraine all the time. So sleeping sounds ridiculous, but it is important. But of course, I can go where I want. I can meet, I can call everyone and go everywhere. One thing I missed a lot there was running in the forest. I like running. I do that basically every morning, 10K or something like that. And you Ukraine, Odesa or in Kiev or wherever I only did it in the asphalt and really hard area. Because if you're doing it in the forest, there could have been a missile dropping mines in the forest. It's not high risk, not in the where I was living, but there is a risk. So I was only doing that in the asphalt all the time. So running here in the mountains or in the forest, and think like, I don't need to bring my passport when I'm out running here. I don't need to bring my phones in order to hear the air alerts. And I don't need to pack my grabber bag 3-4 times a day to making sure that everything is in place. I don't, every time I leave my home, need to have my grab bag with me. I have nothing. I go out in my t-shirt and shorts.
It's so far away from our own life, I think.
Yeah, it is. Wow, what a good experience it's been for me. I'm learned so much about the Ukraine country and the Ukraine people. Got some friends that I will keep, and at some time I feel so sorry for them, and more hate against Russia and what they are doing. I have not been in the trenches, but it's dying with the injured more than 1,000 people in this war every day. For what? For nothing. It's so stupid. I cannot grab that. Why? I do understand why they are, but still I cannot understand why they are. But there will be an end. Once again, I'm optimistic.
Thank you, Erik, for sharing.
Thank you for letting me come into your great pod, Lena. Thank you.
Every
conversation
matters.
Thank you, Erik. I'm not sure that you have embraced everything that you have experienced yet, even though you have been back for a couple of months. But I'm thankful that you wanted to share your story with my listeners. Global trade and shipping, that is our passions. Let's share some of our passion with the people in the Ukrainian maritime space. I'm sure that we can all find a way to support imports and exports from Ukraine or to Ukraine. That is all for now. I think we need some time to think about everything that Erik shared with us. Until the next time, from me to you, over and out. Thank you for listening to the Shipping Podcast. Don't forget to tell everyone that you meet that there is a shipping podcast available and that they should download it and listen to the maritime professionals who are sharing their passion for the shipping industry.